I think most of you know that it's my job to glorify the Black Hills as a tour director and a tour operator, and it's really easy when you live in God's country to do that. But I have become, in addition to my job, I've become kind of a collector of some historical, or well, they're historical, but publicity things that have gone out about the Black Hills. Over the years, I have some of those with me. And while I was working on this program, it occurred to me that a lot of this stuff is really well written. And I just wanted to share a few of these things with you today. And I hope I have everything in the right order. All right. It is popularly believed that tourism in the Black Hills dates from the summer of 1927, when Calvin Coolidge, the President of the United States, spent his summer vacation in Custer State Park, bestowing millions of dollars worth of free publicity on the little-known area. Undoubtedly, 1927 does mark the beginning of the modern industry known as travel and tourism, in which a significant segment of the population actively pursues visitor dollars. However, people had been seeking out the pleasures offered by pure mountain air, natural wonders, and recreational opportunities with little or no invitation by the natives, as long ago as the 18th century and probably much earlier. Unknown peoples traversed the southwestern corner of the state as early as 12,000 years ago, leaving pictographs in the Craven and Red Canyon areas as witness to their presence. While we know little about these migrating American Indians, later native groups came to the southern Black Hills specifically to soak away their aches and pains in the warm springs and thereby qualify as tourists, perhaps the earliest ones. Each succeeding wave of Indian immigration had discovered the Minnesota area of the southern hills in turn, and each had laid claim to it. No one knows exactly how many hundreds of years the various Indian tribes had been making special pilgrimages to the hills to cure their sick in the magical warm springs. By the time the first white man laid eyes on the original rock tub in the 1870s, however, it was worn and smooth from years of use. The rocks of teepee rings dotted both the valley floors and level heights of the area, indicating numerous occupations by these first tourists. This more or less continuous use of the Vale of Minnesota makes Hot Springs not only the oldest town in the Black Hills, but the first tourist attraction as well. The promise of a Black Hills vacation land remained unfulfilled. With a shortage of paid attractions in the Black Hills, brochures promoted scenery, the health-building qualities of the climate, and the allure of the West, not necessarily the Old West, promoted in current publications. A brochure published by the Rapid City Commercial Club about 1920 described the pleasures of the Black Hills in this way: a day of sightseeing, of fishing, of hunting, of berrying, of bathing, or kodaking from the train or automobile, of picnicking or experimenting with the pan for gold, all leave their fascinations. The mountains are yearly drawing thousands who are just becoming acquainted with the wonders of the most scenic part of the United States. A 1932 brochure praised the climate. The nights are cool and provide the proper temperature for restful and energizing sleep. Night covering is required, but no mosquito netting is used. The Black Hills have no mosquitoes. Some advertisement appealed to city dwellers, luring them from the heat of urban streets in July and August. Now, this is something very different. This was not intended for tourists or luring them to the area, but this guy writes so well. He's one of my favorites, so I just had to read you. This is a South Dakotan's viewpoint, Archer Gilfillan, from what was the date on this thing? 1953 is the reprint of it that I have here. The place names of the region very often tell much of its early history. The maps of Wisconsin and Maine are fairly peppered with Indian names. The towns of Virginia have their counterparts in the England of today, and the lakes and bayous of Louisiana are as French as Longfellow's Evangeline. South Dakota names take us back to the days of the stagecoach and the gold rush. They smell of the sagebrush and the campfire, and they reflect the wild and untrammeled imagination of a young and adventurous people in a new land. This is particularly true of the Black Hills region. The waterfalls, however, have more or less conventional names. There is Fall River Falls, taking its name from the swift stream that flows through it. Rough Lock Falls, denoting the steepness of the trail that paralleled the creek. And inevitably, there is a Bridal Veil Falls. No self-respecting part of the country would be without one, any more than a bride would be without its namesake. But like so many others by that name, if the bride's veil were patterned after this particular falls, it would be no outstanding addition to her bridal attire. The caves, likewise, have fairly obvious names. Crystal, Jasper, Jewel, Onyx, and Wonderland caves tell their own story. To be sure, we have Wind Cave, named for the strong current of air that blows in and out of it with the changes of atmospheric pressure. And Ludlow Cave, recalling Custer's chief engineer officer who was the first to explore it. But other natural features have more distinctive names. Thus, we have Centennial Prairie above Spearfish, settled in 1876, the year of the Philadelphia Centennial. The Cheyenne Crossing, a few miles southwest of Lead, marks the spot where the old Deadwood Cheyenne Trail crossed Spearfish Creek. Tollgate Flats recalls a toll gate erected at a particularly difficult draw crossing in the early days. The 12-Mile Ranch is situated in the old Deadwood-Sydney Trail, 12 miles southwest of Custer. Then there is the old Bulldog Ranch south of Lead and the Triangle D Ranch near High Sega. Elevations in this state are known by various names: battles, mountains, peaks, and hills. The buttes, itself a western term, have somewhat picturesque names. The most famous is Bear Butte, near Sturgis, so named by the Indians from its fancied resemblance to a sleeping bear. 100 miles to the north are the Crow Buttes, which took their name from a battle between the Sioux and the Crow Indians before the coming of the white men. Northeast of them are the Slim Buttes, 30 miles long and a mile or two wide, while southeast of them are the twin pointed peaks of the Deer's Ears. And variously scattered throughout the state are Turtle Butte, Scotch Cap Butte, Artichoke Butte, Patchskin Butte, and Nipple Butte. Some of the mountains of the Black Hills have interesting names. Charles E. Rushmore, a New York attorney, was making his first and only trip through the hills in the interests of his mining clients, and he pointed to a peak and asked the driver, "What's the name of that one?" And the driver answered jokingly, "Why, that's Mount Rushmore," and the name stuck. Mount Roosevelt recalls the cowboy president's early association with the hills, while Mount Coolidge commemorates that president's sojourn with us in the summer of 1927. The peculiar thing about these two peaks named for presidents is that each one was formerly known as Sheep Mountain. We still have a Sheep Mountain in the Badlands, awaiting the visit of some future president. Mount Doan Robinson, from which the Rushmore carvings are viewed, preserves the name of the state historian who first conceived the idea of the Rushmore Memorial. The so-called peaks seem to deal largely with the history of the region. Terry and Custer Peaks in the northern hills, Harney Peak to the central portion, and Crook's Tower to the west preserve the names of generals who won fame as explorers and Indian fighters. Calamity Peak, near Custer, can refer to no other than the immortal Jane, although it is doubtful whether she ever took the trouble to climb it, her admiration for nature in the raw being confined to the human and preferably male species. But it is when we come to the names of the canyons and gulches that we find the full flavor of the West. The most famous of the gulches is Deadwood, and so called from the dead and down timber found by the first settlers, results of lightning-caused fires, before it became the site of the most widely known city in the state. Close by is Gold Run Gulch, at the head of which is the city of Lead and the site of the country's biggest gold mine. West of Rapid City, Rapid Canyon runs into the heart of the hills, while on their western border is Hell's Canyon, so named by early freighters who found it hell to cross. There are certain canyons and gulches named for individuals, such as Sheps and Stotts Canyon and Burno and Chisholm Gulches. There are those named for animals, such as Blacktail and Grizzly Gulch, and Bear and Buck Springs canyons, or for trees, as Buckeye Gulch and Cedar Canyon, or for minerals as Nugget Gulch and Fusion Canyon. There are names with still more of a western flavor, such as Lost Camp Gulch and Stage Bar Canyon, Boomer Gulch and Teepee Canyon. There are Hot Brook, Cold Brook, and Icebox Canyons. But where else shall we find Hungry Hollow Gulch and Calico Canyon, or Bloody Gulch and Rifle Pit Canyon? What other region can boast of Deadwood Gulch and Dead Man Gulch, Jackass Gulch, Go to Hell Gulch, and Wild Irishman Gulch, Bugtown Gulch and Loveland Canyon, or Sweet Betsy Gulch and Shirttail Canyon? Of one thing we may be sure: paved roads may be built and summer cottages jostle one another along the streams of the Black Hills. But as long as we retain the names given by the high-spirited and carefree pioneers, so long will the spirit of the Old West remain with us. And that is Archer Gilfillan.